covering the world of professional wrestling. This is the Signature Spot with Chris Toplack.
3, 2, 1.
Thank you very much for tuning in to the latest episode of the Signature Spot with Chris Toplack. As always, I greatly appreciate your ongoing support. Yesterday was the official start to the Wednesday Night Wars. It was a historic night, and we have a clear-cut winner when it comes to television viewership. And it's a sizable margin, too. We will get to that momentarily. And on the program today, we're not wasting any time. A full review of AEW Dynamite's debut on TNT, plus I also provide predictions for the announced matches at WWE Hell in a Cell this coming Sunday. There's only 3 matches formally announced, so don't expect a long segment there. AEW Dynamite's Canadian deal came together at the 11th hour on Monday. It airs on TSN2 in Canada, tsn.ca, and the TSN app. So we have the ability to watch AEW Dynamite on a weekly basis, not so much for NXT. Unfortunately, it's only available the very next day on the WWE Network. As I've noted on multiple occasions, I am a loyal NXT fan. In fact, it's my favorite brand, but I've been a supporter of AEW since the very beginning. I want to see them succeed, and I was happy to tune into this historic debut. And for the first time in nearly 19 years, professional wrestling aired on the TNT network. The final episode of WCW Monday Nitro aired on March 26th, 2001 from Panama City. The stars aligned as Cody, Kenny Omega, and the Young Bucks were all free agents at the very same time, and it just so happened that a billionaire and wrestling fanatic, Tony Khan, was willing to invest in the professional wrestling business, both sides holding each other accountable as well. Tony Khan worked out a deal with TNT, and that's where we are today. With 4 pay-per-views under their belt, AEW has really created a viable alternative in the pro wrestling marketplace that was otherwise owned and dominated by WWE. Since WWE NXT airs on the USA Network in the same time slot, which is Wednesdays, from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. in the East, we're spoiled as wrestling fans because we have 2 hungry brands looking to attract a fan base and raise the stakes. So, how did AEW Dynamite turn out? My review starts right now.
Our topic of the week.
Let's start off with a little bit of business. According to the official numbers, and this is from TheWrap.com, a very credible source, they report on television viewership numbers on a weekly basis. So if you read these figures on any website, chances are they grabbed it from TheWrap.com. AEW Dynamite's debut on TNT drew an impressive 1.4 million viewers. Apparently this blew expectations out of the water. A very strong start to their debut on TNT. Now, on the flip side, WWE NXT drew 891,000 viewers on USA. Also still very impressive. 2 weeks ago, they attracted 1.2 million total viewers, so NXT has been very successful up until this point as well, too. So again, as WWE even noted to TheWrap.com, this is not a sprint, it's a marathon. Truer words were never spoken. WCW Nitro could have learned a thing or two about that. So if AEW can maintain this momentum, it's going to look very positive. But let's not dismiss WWE NXT. Again, still solid viewership on a weekly basis. Remember, the key ingredient to this recipe is quality. And with WWE NXT, what we're getting is tried, tested, and true. So how did they hold up this week? By all accounts, they knocked it out of the park. They had a great show. I read the results. I saw the clips again. It does not air live in Canada. I will watch it in its entirety in just a matter of hours. Now, what about AEW Dynamite? Well, guess what? They knocked it out of the park in their debut as well. So in 2019, we are truly spoiled as pro wrestling fans. So let's focus on AEW Dynamite. I flip on TSN2. What do I see? Live from the Capital One Arena in Washington, D.C. What a crowd. The commentary team consisted of Jim Ross, Tony Schiavone, and Excalibur. I have to say, it was completely surreal to hear Tony Schiavone's voice on TNT once again. I was beaming. He has such an incredible voice. I'm a sucker for that. I thought he held his own. Jim Ross, I know this might be an unpopular opinion. may have lost a bit of a step, though. I really felt that Tony Schiavone and Excalibur really held it together. That is by no means taking anything away from Jim Ross, still one of the best in the game, but he didn't seem on his A game to me. Want to know how you felt about that? The live atmosphere was electric. Over 14,000 reportedly in attendance at the Capital One Arena. That only enhanced the presentation. While I'm a loyal NXT fanatic, and you know that, the Full Sail crowd of hundreds really pales in comparison. I've heard some say, well, there's thousands at NXT Full Sail. There's not. I've been there in person. It is hundreds. I can totally vet that. Yes, they are very passionate and hungry, but the arena atmosphere just adds to the show. So really, when you see the Capital One Arena sold out, it's comparing the major leagues to the minor leagues, at least from a visual standpoint, right? And the production looked great. AEW avoided any odd camera angles or obvious mishaps. No, it wasn't perfect, but it was an excellent start to their tenure on TNT. Let's start with the opening match. It was the American Nightmare. Cody with his wife, Brandi Rhodes, looking absolutely stunning in a white dress versus Sammy Guevara at 26 years old. This was a crucial moment for Sami under the spotlight. And in my opinion, he delivered. He is by no means an overnight sensation. He's been at this for years, but this was the biggest moment of his career in terms of exposure. Cody even stated that if he lost this match, Sami would go on to face Chris Jericho at Full Gear on November 9th. Guess what? It is confirmed I will be there in person. I have my tickets. I'm excited. So, great match overall. A lot of spots. I'll get to that momentarily. I feel as though maybe a little bit too much, right? A lot of kickouts with moves that should have ended the match. That inverted suplex from the top rope, I thought that should have ended the match. C'est la vie. Cody got his knees up to counter the shooting star press, and he pinned Sami with an inside cradle. I have to admit, I am a sucker for matches that end without a finisher. Just suddenly like that. It was a fun opener, a solid way to introduce new fans to the product. And after shaking Sami's hand, and by the way, very emotional Cody Rhodes hugging Tony Schiavone, I'm sure he was thinking about his father, Dusty, and how proud he would have been at that very moment. Cody was jumped by Chris Jericho, Le Champion. He strikes again. They even came back from the commercial break. Chris Jericho was still pummeling him with chairs, Brandi looking horrified as she just had to watch it all unfold. So we have our second match. It's MJF versus Brandon Cutler. This match was made after MJF was constantly teasing Brandon Cutler during episodes of the Being the Elite YouTube series. As you may know, Brandon Cutler is the cameraman for the Being the Elite YouTube series. So the Young Bucks said, hey, after all these years of being loyal to us, we're going to provide you with this opportunity. I felt as though Brandon was a little green here. He was by no means lost. He just needs more matches under his belt. He needs to grow that confidence, and he'll obviously perform a lot better. But again, as we've heard earlier, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. He will get better with time. And he's in there with somebody who really is just so mature for his age. He's 23 years old. MJF claims to be the youngest and fastest rising star in the history of pro wrestling. And just a quick little reminder, he's better than you, and you know it. MJF forced Brandon Cutler to tap out to the Salt of the Earth armbar. I'm unsure if Cutler sold the leg injury off the top rope or legitimately slipped and attempted to cover it up. It didn't take too much away from the match, but either way, MJF is your victor. No surprise there. The match was fine for what it was. And this goes without saying, but MJF is destined to be one of the biggest heels in all of pro wrestling. Chris Van Vliet, who you may or may not know from his YouTube channel, a very wise decision to hire him, by the way. He's ultra professional, very good at what he does. He interviewed Kevin Smith, who's lost a sizable amount of weight, and Jason Mewes, who hasn't aged one bit. He's 45 years old. He's had some documented drug problems, alcohol problems in the past, but he's looking fantastic for his age. And they were interrupted by Angelico and Jack Evans. So they traded insults, then Private Party appeared to ease the tension. Wasn't a great segment, but I understand, obviously acknowledging Kevin Smith and Jason Mewes in the audience. In a bit of a backstage vignette, we had Scorpio Sky doing a bang-on impersonation of Barack Obama. Kazarian and Christopher Daniels were essentially his special agents, and I'm just stating, If Scorpio Sky ran for president in 2020, I'd vote for him. Now, of course, I'm not an American citizen, so I can't even vote. How about this tagline for his campaign? Sky's the limit. Free of charge, Scorpio Sky. You can use that one. Tony Schiavone then interviewed SCU. They came out on stage until the Lucha Bros confronted them. Atlas Security pulled each team apart. Now, of course, this is in promotion of the inaugural AEW World Tag Team Championship Tournament. The quarterfinals taking place over the next couple of weeks. You have the Young Bucks versus Private Party, the Lucha Bros versus Jurassic Express, and the Best Friends versus SoCal Uncensored. Then we had Adam Hangman Page versus Pac. Hangman received quite the response from the live audience. Pac and Hangman were originally slated to face each other at AEW Double or Nothing, but famously, Pac had to withdraw due to quote-unquote creative differences. Since then, Hangman came up short against Jericho to crown the inaugural AEW World Champion, and Pac defeated Kenny Omega at All Out. A lot on the line here. Basically, if Pac wins, he continues to climb the rankings because, again, wins and losses matter in AEW. As for Hangman, 2 losses in a row would not look good on the resume this early on. So following a desperation low blow, Pac landed the Black Arrow and then forced Hangman to pass out in the Brutalizer. It's really WWE's loss in AEW's gain because Pac is an incredible performer who can easily be a main event level player at this point for any organization. I also noticed that with the proper build, and most importantly, with time, fans will be very invested in Hangman by the time he does inevitably win the AEW World Championship. It shouldn't be any time in the near future. Let it build, let him chase a great heel champion, and then have him claim the gold. Pac is officially undefeated under the AEW banner. I really enjoyed this match. For the inaugural AEW Women's Championship, it was the Beast Nyla Rose versus Rio. Nyla Rose earned this opportunity after winning the 21-woman Casino Battle Royale at All Out, while Rio was added by defeating Akira Shida. Now, if you recall, there was a triple threat match months ago. Rio actually pinned Nyla Rose. This was essentially some unfinished business here. The crowd was very pro Rio. They were totally invested in her. The near falls certainly helped. They were fantastic. And Rio defeated Nyla Rose, overcame the odds to win the inaugural AEW Women's Championship after throwing everything but the kitchen sink at the Beast. Eventually, she landed a running Meteora to pin her. The finish worked so well because the audience was legitimately surprised by the outcome. I knew I was. I was not ready for it. I thought, wow, I'm stunned in a very positive way. And again, I was humbly surprised by this match. May have been best of the night when you actually consider the near falls and the response from the audience and the genuine surprise here. They did share some undeniable chemistry in the ring, and they told a proper story. Was it flawless? No. Nyla Rose still a little rough around the edges, still growing as a performer, coming into her own. But here I thought it was Nyla Rose's best performance to date. And in the main event, it was the Elite, Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks versus the Maverick, the Pariah, the Outlaw, Le Champion, Chris Jericho, and Santana and Ortiz, formerly known as LAX and Impact Wrestling. I thought it was going to be the surprise. Then about 24 hours prior, it was just announced, hey, it's going to be Santana and Ortiz. I like the element of surprise. Why give it away? Either way, it was still a really fun match. Omega and Jericho have history together dating back to their initial match at Wrestle Kingdom 12. That was very intriguing. Mid-match, Jon Moxley appeared out of nowhere and threw Kenny Omega out of the ring and into the crowd. Great camera work, too, because you had it focused on Kenny Omega's reaction because he was in there basically celebrating. Then you just see Jon Moxley emerge, stand above him, and Kenny Omega knows there's somebody standing behind me. He turns around. It is Jon Moxley starting to throw the fists. I thought it was a lot of fun, but I got to be honest, I'm confused as to why the referee didn't call for a DQ. Because now Kenny Omega is essentially removed from the match. They're fighting in the back. It went all the way back to this VIP area. And Jon Moxley eventually put Kenny Omega through this glass coffee table with an elevated double-arm DDT. So both of them are completely out of the match, even though Jon Moxley's not even involved in it. Then you have Chris Jericho pinning Matt Jackson after landing the Judas Effect with the assist from Santana and Ortiz, who essentially double Irish whipped him into Chris Jericho for that extra bit of impact. Just a quick observation, Nick Jackson the better wrestler, Matt Jackson the better talker. I think we can agree with that. Post-match, Cody ran down to gain retribution on Jericho from that attack earlier in the evening, but eventually Sammy Guevara came out, low-blowed Cody, until his brother, a returning Dustin Rhodes, ran down to clean house. By the way, best snap power slam in the business, bar none. Has been my favorite for years. A big surprise, left for last. Jake Hager, formerly Jack Swagger. He's a big boy, legitimately 6'6", came down to take out Dustin Rhodes, Cody, and the Young Bucks. Bit of an alliance there between Jericho, Santana, Ortiz, Jake, and also Sami. And Jake is a legitimate talent. Think about it. An NCAA collegiate wrestler, a former world heavyweight champion with WWE, and also now he competes in Bellator MMA. So he's a great signing for AEW. Is he a huge name? No, but certainly you can mold him into a bit of a monster. And I would love to see this heel faction take off. They were presented at the conclusion of the show. They stood on stage. Jericho held up his AEW World Championship. Think about it. You have the legendary veteran in Jericho, a premier tag team, Santana and Ortiz. You have the muscle with Jake Hager, a totally legitimate talent. And then you also have the future, a 26 years old Sammy Guevara. It feels very reminiscent of the Dangerous Alliance in WCW. A very intriguing dynamic here. So overall, this was a really fun debut episode. I'm glad I tuned in. It was well-paced, well-produced. Individuals that I know who do not watch pro wrestling very much, they tuned in. They said, wow, that crowd was electric. Again, it enhanced the overall presentation of the show. If I'm nitpicking, I felt as though there were far too many false finishes. But NXT is also very guilty of that as well. That being said, my expectations were exceeded, and by all accounts, AEW knocked it out of the park. From here on forward, it's just about maintaining that momentum. We're truly spoiled with this whole Wednesday night war. My overall grade, about a B+ to an A-. Let me know what you thought of the show all over social media.
You're listening to The Signature Spot with Chris Toplack.
WWE Hell in a Cell takes place this coming Sunday, October the 6th, from the Golden One Center in Sacramento, California. Will we see the return of the red structure, the eyesore that fits far better in a McDonald's Play Center? That is to be determined. Also, much like Extreme Rules, not every match on this card will be contested in a Hell in a Cell cage. Yes, it's the name of the pay-per-view, but not every match has that stipulation attached. Also, with SmackDown airing live on Fridays now, I believe these cards will be left until the 11th hour in terms of their completion. Why do I guess that? Well, there's no WWE Championship match formally announced, and there's a whole bunch of matches not announced. There's nothing really formalized. In fact, I will focus on what is currently announced, and that is only 3 matches. Now, again, I'm assuming we're going to see the following bouts formalized by Friday. How about Brock Lesnar versus Kofi Kingston? That will be a rematch from SmackDown. Perhaps Nakamura versus Ali. Maybe Bayley versus Charlotte Flair. And what about Rusev and Bobby Lashley? Look what Rusev had to witness on Raw. I'm sure he wants to get even with Bobby Lashley, right? Unless he says, hey, it's your problem now. Let's start with Roman Reigns and Daniel Bryan versus Eric Rowan and Luke Harper. This has become one of the most perplexing stories in recent memory that was unnecessarily drawn out with nonsensical twists and turns. It makes my brain hurt. None of it makes sense. That being said, it did lead to a Luke Harper return, so I'm willing to accept it. Now, surely this ends with Daniel Bryan turning on Reigns and then revealing himself as the ringleader, right? Just me? Selfishly, I have adored Daniel Bryan as a heel. But Fox may want that perennial underdog babyface on their SmackDown roster. Who knows? My prediction, Rowan and Harper get their arms raised. For the Raw Women's Championship, it is the man, Becky Lynch, defending her gold against the boss, Sasha Banks. This will transpire inside Hell in a Cell. In fact, this is only the second women's match to be contested inside Hell in a Cell. The first featured Charlotte Flair versus Sasha Banks. If you recall, Banks defeated Lynch at Clash of Champions, but this was my DQ. So you know what that means. Lynch remains champion. But since then, Banks has continued to align with Bayley, her best buddy, so you never know who may show up or who may manage to sneak inside the cell. With Lynch being heavily advertised on SmackDown billboards, I believe my hunch says she's heading over to Team Blue in a few weeks. So that means my prediction, Sasha Banks to become the new Raw Women's Champion. For the Universal Championship, it is Seth Rollins defending against the Fiend Bray Wyatt. This will be contested inside Hell in a Cell. Nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. Based on the Fiend's undeniable momentum, this match has to headline the card, right? The Fiend Bray Wyatt essentially called his shot via Twitter. Also, to be completely honest, the Golden One Center somewhat spoiled this by promoting the Fiend versus the winner of Seth Rollins and Braun Strowman. Either way, Bray Wyatt is a man of his word because he said, I want the winner of Strowman and Rollins. And as we found out, yes, he did remain truthful. Once Rollins defeated Strowman after 4 stomps and a pedigree, the Fiend appeared. He laid out Rollins with Sister Abigail, followed by the Mandible Claw. Now, for weeks, the Fiend has tortured a visibly frightened Rollins. I feel bad for him. I'm sympathetic by simply crawling up to him in the ring. He typically would be sitting in the corner, and he held back from any physical attack until Monday, where Rollins once again found himself in the Mandible Claw. A loss would be damaging to the Fiend. He seems invincible. He seems larger than life. And since this does transpire inside Hell in a Cell, a DQ finish is nearly impossible unless your name is Brock Lesnar. Perhaps wishful thinking here, but I'm going with the Fiend Bray Wyatt to become the new Universal Champion. We'll all be his friends. The Fireflies will rejoice, and he will torture the entire Raw roster. Normally, my predictions last a lot longer, but that's what you get when there's only 3 matches formally announced. Hope you enjoyed the show this coming Sunday. Next week, I will tune into a new episode of AEW Dynamite on TNT. Again, WWE NXT does not air live in Canada, so I will be tuning into AEW Dynamite on a weekly basis. And just a friendly little reminder, WWE SmackDown debuts on Fox tomorrow, Friday, October 4th, in what looks to be a historic event. This also happens to be the 20th anniversary of SmackDown, so needless to say, it's a very important episode. WWE Champion Kofi Kingston versus Brock Lesnar for the WWE Championship has already been announced. Plus, The Rock, yes, the People's Champion, will be there live and in person at the Staples Center. Same with Hulk Hogan, Ric Flair, Sting, Goldberg, and Trish Stratus. Plus, I'm sure many, many more. So if you would be so kind, rate, review, subscribe. Follow The Signature Spot on social media and tell your friends, family, and fellow wrestling fans to tune in on a weekly basis. And until next Thursday, happy trails to you. Until we meet again.
This concludes another episode of The Signature Spot with Chris Toplack. For new episodes, subscribe on YouTube, Stitcher, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, or iTunes. And don't forget to follow The Signature Spot on Facebook for exclusive clips, polls, and opinions.